and then we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will call the September 15th, 2015 regular meeting of the Doddridge County Commission to order. The first thing that we're going to do is make a change to the agenda, and we are going to allow Antero to make their presentation. After the presentation, then obviously anyone is entitled and more than welcome to stay for the regular county commission meeting, but that will convene once again after the presentation by Antero. First, I will ask Mr. Kevin Ellis from Antero to come up, and if he wants to introduce his individuals and they're going to conduct the meeting for the next period of time for however long they want. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Commissioner Robson. Thank you to the County Commission. We appreciate the opportunity to be here and glad to see the turnout today. My name is Kevin Ellis. I work with Antero Resources in the Bridgeport office. Live in Morgantown, been resident of Morgantown for 15 years. So we're excited today to be here to talk about a facility that we announced a project on a few weeks back that we feel has a great deal of benefit to the environment, and we want to kind of talk about the project, talk about some of the specifics of the project, and tonight we'll have someone make that presentation. I'll introduce him, and following the presentation we'd be more than happy to entertain some questions, and with us tonight I'll introduce Jackie a little bit more here later. She will help kind of make sure we recognize people who might want to have questions about the presentation. So I wanted to, at this point in time, introduce Conrad Baston with Antero Resources. Conrad is native West Virginia, lives in Fairmont with his wife and children. Conrad has about 18 years experience in engineering. He has a master's degree in engineering from West Virginia University, and is currently Antero's general manager of civil engineering. So the project that you're going to hear about tonight, in large part, was part of Conrad's work, and so we're very proud of what he's done for this project, and we think that the presentation will be very informative. So with that said, I'd like to bring Conrad over, and he'll go through the presentation. And if you can't see or can't hear, Conrad may go back and forth. He might not necessarily stay at the microphone, but he's probably able to communicate. You can hear him. If you can't hear him, let us know. We'll get him switched around. Thank you.
If I might interject one short comment, we will have a deputy or the sheriff in attendance in case there's any escort services needed this evening.
County Commission, I appreciate the time that you've given us here tonight to talk. I appreciate everyone coming. If anyone can't see, tell me where I should move to. Other side? Is this okay? Okay.
Sir?
Yes.
Turn the lights off on that screen. It's very hard to see.
I'm not sure. Is there a way to dim the lights where we can see the screen better? I think it's that shade up there because it's shining in my eyes too. Is that any better, folks?
And could you tell us your last name again, please?
Yeah, it's Conrad Baston. I'm the general manager of Antero's civil design and construction department here in West Virginia. I'm out of Bridgeport. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about our plant. I'm sure some of you have seen the announcement there in the paper. It's something that's a very, very high-tech plant that we're very proud of. But at the same time, I want to start off with just generally how we as a company, have approached water. It's not just about wastewater, it's about the fresh water that comes to our system that we use for frac. So a lot of our, apologies, I'm moving away from the sun. What do we do? What do I do? My goal has been to help Antero develop a water system in 2 phases. First phase was for freshwater delivery. A lot of you have been here long enough to see how the plays developed. You know, when it was very young, we as industry went to local sources to try to draw from small streams, and that overtaxed those streams in some instances. So, trying to be a very forward-thinking group, well, what do we do? Well, we build a more reliable system. Well, how do we do that? And we're going to talk about some of our freshwater system here. The goals of that were to, minimize our impact, reduce impacts to the community. What are some of those impacts? Everyone loves the water bottle, the water truck that drives down the road. So we've developed a freshwater system to try to reduce those truck trips, and we'll talk about that a little bit here. And I live here too. My goal has been to try to meet or exceed all the regulatory standards that we have as an industry. So we try to plan, beyond what regulations require us to do. And then we'll get into the second phase with our wastewater plant. So here's our freshwater network. These are some examples. Like I mentioned to you, develop this to try to reduce truck traffic. So more securely deliver water to the pad via pipeline. You can imagine the efficiency in pumping water through a pipe as opposed to putting it in hundreds of trucks to take to a well pad. So that's what our freshwater system is. It's built to target more secure sources of water. So if you guys have all, I'm sure there's some trout fishers in here, you know what an upland stream is, and you know what the Ohio River looks like. Those are 2 very different surface water sources. One of them can dry up much quicker than the other. So whenever we need water for frac, we developed our freshwater system to try to target much larger sources of water that are more secure and less risk to draw from in dry times. So we built a system that can pump from the Ohio River into our clay. We've also developed a lot of impoundments for storage. And I'm sorry that you guys can't see this for the sunshine, but here's an example of a couple of the impoundments we use for water storage. These are, if you think of them like, if there's any engineering folk in the room, they're kind of like a pump storage facility. They're not a dam on a stream. They're an excavated hole towards the top of a ridge where we pour fresh water into. So it stores it there. It's not connected to any other water system except our pipeline. And what those impoundments have allowed us to do is minimize our overall footprint and need with our drill pads. If some of you have seen the play develop in the younger phases, you have to have a drill pad, you have to have a great big pond next to it so you can store water in the pond and then frack the well. These impoundments are more strategically located where we don't have to have that much storage at every pad. We can pump from a longer distance to our facility from these impoundments. So when you're I don't know, there's good and bad engineers. I think some of the good ones learn from their life, and that's what they do in their engineering. So whenever I was a kid, one of my favorite things was stringing green beans. So why did I do that? Well, there weren't any green beans in the wintertime. We grew them and ate them off the farm. So we would string the beans, put them in a can them, eat them all winter. That's what these impoundments are. They're that cannery, they're that pantry. We take water from surface sources where we can't withdraw during low flow times, and we store it in the impoundments. So when water's high, when there's flood water, when water's in excess, we transport the water into these large impoundments. And then when the streams are down, we don't pull from them. We pull from our pantry. The freshwater system consists of buried lines and surface lines. Excuse me, I'm fighting some allergies. The buried lines are just a buried pipeline. They're generally HDPE or steel. Some of them are 24 inches in diameter, so large water supply. If you think of those as the backbone of our system, the surface line is a temporary line that's laid on top of the ground. And what that allows us to do is instead of building water pipelines buried all over the country, we build a trunk line And then when we have a need off on the pad, we lay that temporary surface line to pump that fresh water over to the pad for frac. And here's an example of one of those. This is some of the environmental controls we use for these surface lines. We have these features here. You see these pans and this fence and silt fence. This is a steel I-beam that's supporting that surface water line over top of, this was out in Gentleman's Field. There's a little wetland right here in the middle. So we're spanning that pipeline over top of that wetland. Here's some more metrics about our freshwater system. In 2014, the system eliminated 480,000 truck trips from our roads. So that's 500,000 truck trips that didn't go on the road. They went through the pipeline, supplied via pumps. It's been a reliable delivery system for us. We haven't trucked any fresh water since it's been in operation for frac. And as I mentioned before, those large sources like the Ohio mitigate the need for us to withdraw from any local streams. The other thing it lets us do, this is just some examples of some plumbing and one of our pump stations on the Ohio, or our only pump station on the Ohio. This is a above ground storage tank. Think of it like a swimming pool that some of us have in our backyard, the above ground swimming pool. This is the industrial version, steel plate. Instead of having that large impoundment on that pad, we can set up this swimming pool, is what we call it, just in the shop. We can set up this temporary swimming pool and pump our water into this. You can see that's all fresh water. That's probably out of the Ohio right there. And so it's a temporary thing. It's not a permanent thing. It limits our land disturbance. And then we use that water for frac, and then we disassemble that tank and move it to the next tank bed. Here's an example of some of our pipelines. So this is all water pipeline. The blue is buried in the ground. Some of the other little spurs you see coming off of there are our temporary surface lines. This is our withdrawal on the Ohio River right here. And just for general orientation to the map, this is Clarksburg right here. So Parkersburg, if we extended this map a little bit, Parkersburg would just be off the west side of the map. So the water system allows us to bring water inland from the Ohio to service our fracs without pulling from local sources. And essentially, we wouldn't because we consume the water, but if we wanted to, we could pump water from essentially the Ohio River to Clarksburg. Similar system in Ohio, more focused on local lakes in the area, so it doesn't connect to the Ohio River, but it's in the state of Ohio. This one is a little bit more complicated because here we're not withdrawing from the Ohio River, we're withdrawing from a severely sensitive lake that's owned by Muskingum Water Conservancy District. And water's scarce in that area. A lot of us in the industry saw these lakes as an opportunity to try to get water from. And we had to build our case very, very significantly that we could pull from that lake without polluting it, without disturbing any of the recreational activities of the folks that have camps around that lake. So we spent months and months building our case, showing our procedures for how we operate our water lines and our pumps, how we critically silence our pumps, how we contain our sites for these water delivery services. We showed how we wouldn't backflow fresh water back into the lake. It's all everything coming out of the lake going to our pads. We wouldn't release any erosion back towards the lake. That was a big concern. And we're one of the few operators that were allowed to withdraw from that. So we have a temporary line that runs from the lake down to our buried pipeline, and we pay the Conservancy District a fee per 1,000 gallons to withdraw that water, and they're using it to upgrade some of their camps and facilities for the locals around the community. So back to that's why I don't use the microphone. Back to our freshwater system. We've got about 80 miles of temporary surface line in West Virginia right now. Approximately 103 miles of buried line and 24 impoundments, those pantries that I talked to you about. By the end of 2016, we anticipate to have about 98 miles of surface line on the ground, 115 miles of buried line, and 2 more impoundments to take us to 26 total. The general capital investment for freshwater in West Virginia is $320 million here on that map that you saw. All of our fresh water is delivered by that pipeline, and that system is also, generated in terms of right-of-way payments to the landowners that we cross. It's just buried line, this isn't surface line as well, but just to those landowners, about $24 million in right-of-way payments for buried line alone. In Ohio, it's similar, but it's just a smaller system than what we have in West Virginia, a smaller area of acreage. 35 miles of surface line, 49 miles of buried line, 14 impoundments over there. By the end of 16, 52 miles of surface line, 49 miles of buried line, and we're going to increase up to 23 impoundments. About $105 million capital investment over there. Again, all of our fresh water has been delivered by pipeline, not by truck. And about $5 million in right-of-way payments to those landowners for buried line. That's not including surface line price. Okay, so with that, that's the first phase of water that we talked about, our freshwater delivery. So now, I was going to talk about the plant that we've had the questions about. So the plant is an advanced wastewater treatment facility. This is a general rendering of it. There'll be essentially a truck offloading facility here. There are different process tanks, and then a series of crystallizers or thermal evaporators on the back side of the plant. So what is it? It's a very, very expensive, very, very high-tech tea kettle, if you think of it in those terms. When we take water out of the ground, when we frack, we have water that comes back. It's called flowback and produced water. That water is very, very high in salt, cations, and anions in the water that have to be cleaned. And what the plant does is it has a pre-treatment section where water offload from the trucks comes into these tanks, and some of the ions are removed, and then it essentially at that point is kind of clean salt water, but it's very, very salty salt water. We're not talking ocean salt water, we're talking really salty salt water. That salt water then goes into these vapor bodies, and that water is brought to its boiling point, but as the salt is being boiled and swirled in these tanks, crystals are forming, and the crystals are being pulled out. So that comes out as a salt whenever that's being processed. So what does it do? We take water from the well pad through trucks to the treatment facility. It produces, as effluent from the plant, freshwater quality effluent that would go back into our freshwater pipeline and then be delivered to our pads for frack. So it goes straight back to the well pad. It also produces a salt, some of which is food grade quality salt. If anybody wants some, I can get you a big bag of it. I thought about calling it the taste of the Marcellus, but nobody will bite. So it's not something that, although it's food grade quality, there are marketable uses for it as a byproduct. There are certain industries that can use it for chemical processing, a lot of things that then you have to have a really, really clean salt for clean plastics and things like that. It also has a filter cake that comes out. That is the anions and things in the water that are dissolved from the formation that we take out before it goes into the crystallizers. So what we did before is, when the play was very early, we tried to recycle water. So we would take flowback water from a well, we would clean it or polish it, or sometimes we would just treat it with biocide, depends on what company you're talking to. And that water would be reconsumed back down in the next frack. So if you frack a well, some of the water comes back, you put that back down the next hole. And that works as long as your return water can be reconsumed. But depending on market conditions or how many wells you've drilled, at some point the industry will have more water coming back than it can reconsume. So what are your options then? Your options are to inject water back down in an injection well, or to treat water with advanced wastewater treatment methods. And what we've evaluated and what we've decided is that advanced treatment is the best solution for long-term recycling of this water. So the plant makes discharge quality fresh water that can be put back into surface water streams. And then we have the additional salt and filter cake byproducts that would go to landfill. Before, whenever we were recycling, we would take water from the well pad to a flowback, a pit on site, and then we would truck it back to the well pad. And sometimes that would have to get shuffled. You would take it to, you'd flow back into a pit. You might have to drive it to another pit, store it in that pit. You might have to drive it to another well. So many truck trips with all that. In this instance, we're eliminating that pit. We don't need that. We don't need that flowback storage on site anymore. Just like we don't need that fresh water impoundment on the pad anymore. We would just take the water up, go straight to the plant, and it's done. Then what comes out of the plant is fresh water that goes back into the pipeline. So those additional truck trips for that water are eliminated. So some of the benefits of the plant. By creating that fresh water out of the plant, we thereby need less to draw from even the Ohio River. So it offsets our freshwater demand by about 49,000 barrels a day. That's about 2.1 million gallons a day. It reduces the need for our injection wells because with this advanced wastewater treatment, you don't have to take all that produced water to injection. So if we were to kind of equate the amount of water that runs through the plant to injection wells, we'd have to build about 63 of them to treat this amount of water. So the plant is just this one centralized location instead of having 63 injection well pads. You can cluster a couple of injection wells on a pad. But instead of having all those pads and all that additional disturbance and the truck trips to all of those various pads instead of coming to one location, that's another benefit of the plant. Centralized, one-stop shop for that water. And over the life of the plant, instead of that water being injected underground, we get about 160 million barrels, 6.7 billion gallons back to surface water use over the life of the plant. Centrally located within our area, so you know where a lot of folks are developing wells. The plant is located in the center of that. It's immediately off of 50, so when you're trucking to the plant, it's just an immediate turn right off of 50 into the plant. It's not traveling up a bunch of roads to impact the community. So our long-term picture for dealing with our wastewater is, this is in 2014. Our advanced wastewater treatment, we did about 1%. We injected 26%. And basic treatment in terms of just recycling or putting water back down hole was about 73%. In 2015, we injected about 68% of our water. Basic recycling treatment, up hole, back down hole was about 26, and then advanced treatment was 6%. The plant, we intended for it to be online around 2017, and at that point, the majority of our treated water volume would be dealt with by advanced wastewater treatment with a minority position in it. So I think what you can tell from that is, there's a lot of concern around injection with seismicity, where's the water being injected, where does it go, these different factors, and we feel that the advanced plant is just a much better solution for our long-term needs. So how did we select who to partner with to design the plant? Being a good engineer, whenever we come to these type of things, we call everybody that's got a reputation, understand everyone in the water treatment industry, we call all the big blue chips, some of the startups, we talk to everybody. And we landed with Veolia Technologies, who's a company that is international, they're based out of Paris. They have a local shop, they have local shops in the States, all over the place. The closest is in Pittsburgh. They have several thousand people here in the States. A worldwide presence in water treatment. Veolia has a very long history They signed their first contract with Napoleon, Bonaparte. So as we're evaluating companies, they have the longest history, the longest track record, and some proprietary technology that seemed to be the best fit for our needs. So we've been really excited to work with them. They've been a great team, great technical team to help develop this plan. So what are some of the economic impacts of the plan? It's $290 million capital investment. Over 2 years during construction, we'll have about 250 temporary construction jobs. Beyond that, I believe there's around 21 permanent facility jobs created. During the construction, we had a local workforce clause for the construction of the plant, so we use as many local folks as possible to build it. And there is some local tax potential that I think we've got some preliminary numbers on that. We could be, I think we're $1.5 million in tax revenue to the county. So with that, I'm sorry that's a quick tour. If the commission has any questions about what I presented, I'd be glad to answer, and then anything from anyone else. Yes, sir.
Talk about the salt.
Yes, sir.
Talk about that. What are you going to do with all this salt?
Current intent is to take the waste streams where they're going now, which is to municipal landfills.
Okay, can't be used for anything else?
It can, yeah. A portion of it is like I said, it is food grade quality. So a portion of it, there's recoverable byproduct that can be extended. So there's uses, we're looking at things like road salt, other options like that, where there could be some beneficial uses for it.
Has there ever been used as road salt?
It has been. There have been other plants that use it as road salt.
Where?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you give me one?
And there's a plant up in Fairmont, called Fairmont Brine, and I believe that they use some for local de-icing.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, so Conrad, thank you. As you can all tell, Conrad is the subject matter expert, so we'll certainly have a lot of reliance on him to answer questions. But what we're going to do is we'd like to take some questions, and specific to the presentation of the facility that Conrad has talked about. And then Jackie is going to try to help be our eyes and ears to come around and spread the questions around to everybody that would like to talk about that. So with that said, we'll probably take questions for 15 or 20 minutes or so, and because we know there's other business to attend to. But with that said, Jackie.
Hi. How many trucks, according to your air quality permit, I believe there were 16 bays for the trucks to come in and out of the plant. How many trucks will be approaching the plant on a daily basis?
At peak capacity, there will be about 600 truck trips a day. And one thing that you have to realize is those trucks are on the road right now. Those truck trips are occurring right now every day. In this instance, they're going to a centralized location instead of going off into all different areas of the country.
You mentioned that some of the salt brine would be sold to WPDOT for road salt. I have in my hand here a memorandum from Governor Manchin when he was still in office that prevents this very thing.
Yes. Yeah, that's absolutely
I
true.
contacted DEP today, and as far as they understand, it's still in effect.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. So if you can understand the way regulations are, is they're written with the understanding of what the processes are in the field at the time. So if somebody is telling you, that was kind of written in the spirit of when we just did shallow oil and gas development. This was a little bit before I got into oil and gas, but you could take some of that brine from shallow wells and you could just apply it to the road. So what we were restricted on was taking the water from Marcellus and doing the same. Now, if there are avenues or new technologies where that salt can be cleaned to a certain standard and the scientific argument can be made, then there is that option. There is that
And
potential.
you can give us an absolute assurance that there's no radium-26, no radium-28 in the salt that you're...
I wouldn't do it otherwise.
No
Yeah.
bromine.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it otherwise. If we can't do that, it will go to a landfill. Yeah, so it's not, I'm not saying that as soon as this thing's spun up and running, I'm gonna take all the salt and spread it all across all the roads.
And where's your landfill located?
We don't have it.
And,
I have a question over there.
Yeah, I have a question. So if I just heard you say you're certain that there'll be no radiation on the produced water that gets treated and then put on our roads, and I know you can't answer this without going to your corporate people, but would you be willing, because we have researchers who are interested that do radiation monitoring, would you be willing to work in a partnership with them if our volunteer citizen group can arrange this so that they can actually take samples of what's going out in these trucks and monitor them for radiation? Because I have people that are willing and interested in doing that,
Well, I
if
mean-
you're going to give us access.
Sure, we will certainly comply with any regulatory requirements within the state.
Okay, well, right, regulatory requirements
So
within
if
the
it's,
state.
if it's in cooperation with those
Well, one of
regulators.
the things we know is that the state is very lax in regulatory requirements. And I know you say that you do better than, as far as environmental things. For what people don't realize, that the fracking industry is exempt from 17 pieces of environmental legislation on a federal level, and that's the only way they can frack is to be able to do what they do. They have to have these exemptions. A good place to find that is Google the terms loophole for polluters and the earthworks, and you'll get a government link that shows all the exemptions they get. So to say that you're doing everything according to EPA, or you're exempt from it, so that's saying really nothing. And that's why we're
Excuse me,
concerned
with all
about
due
what's going
respect,
on the road.
we're not here to talk about hydraulic fracturing. There's another question on here.
But you're processing the fluid, how
This is
can you
what
not
it's all
talk about
about.
fracking?
Go ahead,
You
sir.
said there's 4,600 trucks in, right? That means 1,200 trucks entering and exiting Route 5 at my front door. Here, I'm probably one of the closest houses there. Are they going to put their own exit off the 50 or continue to use our exit?
We-
Are they going to upgrade that entrance? And
Yeah.
Two-part question, that, and the next part is, what do you do with the solids? Are they trucked out, or are they going to be
Okay, sure.
in-house?
Sure. So just to talk through the general permitting for the site, the whole site. The people that we deal with are, and I'll get to your question. The DEP, Army Corps, EPA, DHHR, Fish and Wildlife. There's a slew of additional agencies. Essentially, every government agency that I can't think of one that we don't get permits from. And of those, one is DOH. So we have an approved entrance permit for the plant for construction. We're continuing to evaluate the intersection. If it needs upgraded, we'll upgrade it. But that blessing to do that ultimately comes from the Department of Highways. So if that study says, I think me and some of my guys were thinking maybe at least a deceleration lane if it needs a light, then that's the decision. If DOH blesses that, then that's what will be done.
Yes.
In your, first of all, I want to categorically state that any effort to reduce freshwater consumption and to attempt to recycle it should be supported, and it speaks to the issue of sustainability of the natural gas industry. I think when you mentioned that this is brine, we're primarily using that word as though it's like pickle juice. The test results over some years out of Pennsylvania, and they came up with last January with a large study, that the produced waters and flowback, now I'm not too concerned about flowback because it's usually more benign than produced water, which other folks call brine, are much more nasty and of greater concern. They're upwards of 15 to 18, 20,000 picocuries of gross alpha, which usually cannot be treated out. Maybe we can reduce the salt some, but at no point did you address the highly radioactive Marcellus Shale. Now, geologists have known this for 40 years or more, and it's commonly known by all geologists that Marcellus is more radioactive. So
Sure.
the heavy metals and the radioactivity need to be addressed upfront, clearly, squarely, and honestly, because this plant is, if it works, it would be great. If it's not if it's not perfectly designed, installed the way it's designed, operated in accordance with standard operating procedures, with a lot of fail-safe features, we risk a massive amount of potential water contamination, and the Ritchie County folks might not like it.
Sure.
So those are all downstream. We all have friends or relatives in Ritchie County and downstream of here. A weak spot is all the trucking and all the piping. Now, all over the northern panhandle and the whole Marcellus Shale fields, we've had thousands of truck accidents and pipeline failures. Those are the two ways that you can get your radioactive, highly contaminated brines and produced waters to that plant. Those are a risky endeavor. To say that, well, we have those trucks on the road now is absolutely true. It's just that we are being relatively brain dead as a state by labeling them all residual waste. I mean, I'm sure if, I don't know if you have a chemistry background, I don't, but if you went to the local chemistry store and ordered 5 gallons of residual, well, what would you get?
Yeah.
Okay, it's really a misnomer.
Okay.
Stuff is, we need to deal with this because it is the Achilles heel of the sustainability issue for the natural gas industry. I prefer natural gas if it reduces mountaintop removal. But we need to deal with this water, the water processing, and to just call brines is doing a total disservice to the community's confidence or lack thereof in what might be maybe experimental technology. Has this ever been done with Marcellus Shale quality produced water?
Okay.
Ever, anywhere?
Okay. And I'll come back to your solids question as part of this answer. So I hear the radiation question, so let's talk about radiation. If you Google radiation, you will get the absolute worst case that you can get. That's the way the internet works. You know, it's like the news agency. So if you look within our area, just geologically, to the north, some of those rocks have higher uranium thorium content. In our area, they're less. So the rocks we drill absolutely have radiologic components. If we go out there with a shovel in the hill, that dirt out there has radiological components in it. So in this room right now, we're breathing radon. That's part of where we live. And if you want to certainly educate yourself on some of those type of issues, that those Google searches will take you to EPA's site. Look up radon. Start with radon. That will start telling you what areas have these type of conditions in our area. So I think if you look on EPA's website, I think we're in zone 2 for radon. Does anyone have a radon system in their house? I have one in mine. I tested mine. I have 3 kids. Mine tested 3 picocuries per liter radon. The action level's 4. I put in the test. I put in the system to vac out my house because it's below the action limit, but why not? Cheap. I put it in. Everyone in this room lives in a radon area. Everyone in this room is exposed to surface soil that contains those type of radiological elements. Everyone in this room, on average, is exposed to about 620 millirems a year of radiation. That's in 2 buckets. One is in naturally occurring materials. One is in man-made materials. And I'm not a radiation expert. I'm speaking in generality. In terms of, maybe I got some stuff right down. In terms of sources that you experience every year. Okay, so natural radiation sources. The sun's in my eyes when we're shining. We're trying to do this presentation. These are all natural. Okay. Cosmic radiation from sun and outer space, about 28 millirems a year is what we all get. That's every American. From the Earth's crust, if you go out and work in your garden, if you till a field, interacting with the dust, if you ingest, inhale, you get about 28 millirems a year from that. Internal sources, this is just food, where food grows. What it takes out of the soil, you get about 39 from that. And radon, the average American gets about 200 millirems a year from radon. So what are some man-made sources? Medical radiation, roughly 300 millirems a year. Everything else is kind of a minority component. Consumer products, about 10 millirems a year. Industrial use is less than 3 millirems. And we're all getting from the nuclear program years ago when they tested for the bombs, we're all getting about 1 millirem a year from that. So what are some, just some general metrics to kind of give you an idea of exposure limits? You know, we all get 600 just by being Americans. That's just being part of the world right now. If you were to smoke a pack of cigarettes a day for a year, that's 8,000 millirems to your lungs. 8,000. When the tobacco plant grows, it pulls certain surface elements out of the soil as it grows. It goes into the tobacco. When you inhale that, deposits in your lungs. That's one of the reasons for lung cancer from cigarettes. So a lot of the main paths for contamination from radiological sources is ingestion, inhalation. Okay. Some other examples.
Fracking, maybe?
I'm sorry?
Fracking, maybe?
Flaring. We'll get to that. The smoke detector in your house. That's 1 millirem a year, just from what's in your house. Okay. So whenever we have, we're working with some of the best radiation experts in the industry. We've evaluated our materials, and the public exposure risk from our plants or where this material goes is essentially non-detect.
First of all, well, you had your hand up in the back over there first.
I was wondering, are you just justifying giving us more radiation? By all that talk about how much we're naturally getting?
No, what I'm trying to explain is that's what we experience all the time, and from these type of activities, there's not any more. There wouldn't be.
But
It
do
wouldn't
these
be measurable.
activities set off alarms at landfills like the track-produced water trucks do?
Yeah, so I mean, we're talking about a lot of mixed different bag of we have to compare apples and oranges. That's not treatment
Well, you're
waste.
comparing
Those are
apples and
tracers.
oranges.
Those are man-made tracers that are much higher concentration that are held under a different standard. That's not what this treatment plant is.
There's another question over here.
Actually, it's not a question. Okay. In regards to your radiation, natural radiation, years we have been trying to eliminate the problem of radiation. UV, sunblock, you know? When you go in to have an MRI, CAT scan, man-made,
Yeah.
you shield.
Mhm.
Radiation, you're not going to experience it in one generation. You're going to experience in future generations, whether it's man-made or whether it's natural. That's what, you've got to educate the people on.
Yeah.
Not my generation. I don't have to worry. I'm going to die in the next 20 years. My grandchild, she wears sunblock now. If your industry is putting out even the least little bit of radiation, radon, whatever you think is going to pollute and damage future generations, beware.
Sure.
And don't lie, don't shove it under the rug. Let people know.
Yeah.
We don't want another Chernobyl. We don't want another Japanese incident with the nuclear.
Well, and let's understand, this is not a nuclear facility. This
No,
is,
it's not.
this is naturally.
But if you're damaging even a microscopic amount of the environment for future generations,
Yeah.
you're just as liable. You are just as liable as if it was the nuclear industry.
No, I certainly appreciate that. And what we would say is that that's why we have these permits, that's why we have these regulations, that's why we have DEP, Corps, EPA, all these people have guidance on what is allowable to put where. And those are the standards that we would meet or exceed.
Are you going to give us iodine pills?
That's absolutely not necessary.
Okay.
Any reassurance about that? Thank you.
Okay, it's my understanding that, you're going to pack up the residual salts and take them to a landfill, that's what carries the radioactivity in it, right?
Not the salt. No, the salt doesn't have any radiation in it.
The
Sludge does.
sludge. Okay, is that also going to the
Yes.
landfills?
Yes.
What happens if you decide to put a landfill out here?
Okay, yeah, no, we always evaluate alternatives. And one of the things that, we would like to design is a close landfill. We have not submitted for a permit. I'm doing some preliminary design to see if it's viable. If there was an economic reason to build a landfill and we could meet all the requirements of the codes for that landfill, it's something that would be attractive. It would be, should that become an alternative, it would be the latest technology. It would be immediate proximity to the plant, so you don't have any transport, you don't have those additional road trucks driving.
In the orange map?
Yeah,
Thank you.
well, I'm with Friends of the Hughes Watershed. We have a very good working relationship with the DEP. Now, we happen to know for a fact that there's been so much miscommunication between water and waste and air quality that there is plans for a landfill there.
Mm-hmm.
They're keeping a very close eye on you because of this miscommunication.
Mm-hmm.
And also, in some very fancy words, you're also wanting to buy other people's wastewater, flowback, brine, whatever you want to call it, that is going to turn this place into an industrial landfill, not a Class F landfill for your private.
Mm-hmm.
Once you buy it, I understand on the truck, but if you want to be upfront with us, you need to be honest with us from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I heard you jump around the landfill here all day. You're actually working without a permit, there's been miscommunication within the DEP. You need to come up front with all of us in the beginning.
Well, we haven't submitted a permit with the DEP for a landfill.
No, there is no.
If I may, if we can prove the case to the DEP that it's a sound facility and can be built safely, we would pursue a landfill. But we haven't validated the economics on whether it's viable or not.
But the air quality was told there wasn't. Yogesh from Water and Waste was told there was. So it took a conference call and a bunch of arguing to get everybody to admit to it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you shouldn't come up front with everybody here present. This man had a question here about the waste beside of his house.
Yeah, no, I think I answered. I think what I'm trying to say is that I am pursuing the conceptual design of a landfill. I have not submitted a permit to DEP. If that permit is submitted, and if it meets all the criteria that's scientifically sound to say that it's a viable alternative, and if that landfill is economic to us, I would pursue it.
Okay, now add to that, Mike. How
Yeah.
long would the liner be good for in your landfill?
It's all subject to the design, but it's, thousands of years.
Okay, 1,000 years. So this is modern technology.
Yes.
I mean, that nobody's heard of before.
No, I mean,
But
so
again,
it's
guaranteed to lead you to the North Fork of the Hughes River. This is something that's been established. Every liner leaks, no matter what it's for. This has been established. And the first water system to pick it up is Ritchie County. That's right there, feeding the North Fork.
yeah.
Another question in the back.
One question relating to the water for the Ritchie County. why does it have to be at the headwaters of the Hughes first?
Mhm.
Secondly, what are you going to do if you have a blowout and you contaminate the Hughes River?
Yeah,
That is the main source of water for Ritchie County businesses.
yeah.
You'd wipe this off the face of the earth. Now, the other, I'd like to read a statement. This I got from the EPA. It's concerning radiation protection from oil and gas waste. Risks evaluated for members of the public working on or residing within 100 meters of disposal site are similar to those of disposal workers. They include direct gamma radiation, inhalation of contaminated dust, inhalation of downwind radon, ingestion of contaminated well water, ingestion of food contaminated by well water, and ingestion of food contaminated by dust deposition. Risks analyzed for the general population within a 50-mile radius of the disposal site include exposure from the downwind transport of resuspended particulates and radon, and exposures arising from ingestion of river water contaminated via the groundwater pathway and surface runoff. Downwind exposures include inhalation of resuspended particulates, ingestion of food contaminated by deposition of resuspended particulates, and inhalation of radon gas. I seriously would be against any kind of solid waste disposal site at the headwaters of the Hughes. It's the wrong place to have it.
One more final question?
Yes. From what I understand, the radiation in the Marcellus Shale is much worse than the radiation in Texas and some of these other places. There's radon-226, which has a half-life of over 1,700 years. That's over 3,000 years. That's what you're bringing on us. You're going to put it on our roads. I understand that in Texas, the water that they've been cleaning, they've been putting on all their fields of crops. Radiation is showing up in the crops. You, our county commissioners, better think about this. This is what you guys are putting us to. You want one of these storage things over on your property? What about that sludge? Have you tested that sludge to find out how much radiation and toxic chemicals are in there? There are toxic chemicals mixed in with that you guys are using to frack. I don't want it around me. I don't want it around my family. I'm less than 5 miles away from there. And this poor guy, he's sitting right there with it.
Well, let's talk about.
Jackie, thank you for getting back with me. I've been waiting for over 3 years now for you to contact me. You told me you'd get back with me on stuff that we discussed about my area.
So let's talk about that real quick. So I think we're focused on the salt and the deposition. The salt is not. If there's any radiation, it's in the sludge. The salt is not, and it's.
Why do you address the sludge?
Well, okay, let me finish. So it's the salt is the majority of what comes out of the plant too. It's essentially 98% of the total, or 92% of the total solids. The sludge is 80% of the total. That sludge would go to landfill under approved permit. As it goes now.
So you have the landfill before you build the treatment plant?
No. The material from the plant would go to existing landfills as regulated by the state now. If indeed we could approve a local one, and that was economically viable, I would entertain it.
And all this water is just for West Virginia, or are you bringing in from other states?
I don't know, but I think due to just trucking, it's probably all West Virginia.
These existing landfills, would they include possibly like Wetzel County landfill?
I'm not sure about that particular one.
I've been on the Wetzel County Solid Waste Authority for over 15 years. I've been its chairman for over 5 years. And take my word for it, the state of West Virginia has yet to come up with a clue as to how to manage radioactive waste going into landfills to the tune of 500,000 tons in 2 years. It's not been tested properly. The effluent is going into the Ohio River. We must get a handle on this issue. It is the Achilles heel for sustainability. We can't continue to whitewash the radium-226, radium-228. They test for gross alpha and gross beta using the wrong test protocols. The waters have high total dissolved solids. The EPA protocols do not work if you have 2, 5, 10,000 milligrams per liter of total dissolved solids. We don't know what's in that leachate, and we do not know what's in the effluent. I don't trust the current regulations, the current legislation, the current enforcement with any radioactive waste, Marcellus or otherwise, going in any landfill anywhere in the state. I follow this extremely closely, and by the way, I didn't Google radar.
Gentlemen on the council, is all of that worth $1.5 million?
Do you want it in your yard? Do you want it in your yard? Think about it. You're putting it by us. You want it in your yard? Take it in your yard.
The one advantage, the one advantage to this whole thing, guys, at least from outer space, we will glow in the dark with a big sign that says West Virginia. Hey, tourism. Open for business.
Do you have a question over here?
Yes, sir.
When you're going through all of your demonstration of all the examples of radiation that we heard today, you're trying to say that that's equivalent to a plant that's going to generate radioactivity?
No, what I'm saying is that,
I mean, didn't the state of New York disallow using this salt, this byproduct on the highways to melt snow?
yeah, so if I were to try to come back to your question there, it's the salt, it depends on, part of the reason we've teamed with these folks is, the plant is $290 million because it does a lot of things that other treatment methods don't do. So if we arrive at this very, very, the clean salt, we are not going to put any of that on the roads without an appropriate permit. And the analytical that we have, the lab results on the salt and sludge we have right now is that salt does not have those constituents.
Are you implying that this is going to be pure sodium chloride?
Portions of it are.
There's chemicals, there's all sorts of stuff in there when you
Yeah, no. Portion. As I mentioned, a portion of the salt is food grade sodium
What
chloride.
portion? Yeah, I mean, but it's a hodgepodge of all kinds. Most of the stuff is probably.
I'm sorry, but just for time purposes, one more question.
Hi guys, most of you, someone who knows me, my name is Chris Carroll. I work for Antero, and they do treat the people good. They try to do what people ask. I'm taking the debt to work for you guys. You pay me pretty decent and treat me good. And what I have noticed from the people above me, when we do have problems with people, with the landowners and stuff, we do go out and try to fix the problem. It is not something they try to ignore. I wish that we had a lot of people here in the county would come and talk, because I have lived here 42 years. And I don't want my county destroyed a bit more than you guys do. I live beside Denny Powell's property up there. They came in, they drilled it. Mark West just came in and did what they did. It is something that we need, but we do need to control it, guys. And I will say that the company that I work for, they discuss everything. It ain't something that they're going to come out here and try to live. They're not going to come out here and try to destroy this. They are going to try to do it right. Guys, I'm one of the lowest people here at the
Put it in your yard. Put it in your yard.
I tell you what, if my yard was big enough, they're more than welcome. I'd sell it to them. I got kids, and I'm telling you, honest to God, don't think that they're poisoning me to take home to my kids. I don't blow at my tongue.
Final remarks from the commissioners? Questions?
I got a couple of questions. I live close to.
Wait, we can't hear you, Ron.
Okay, I live close to a lot of people in Greenwood. Safety is one thing. Do you guys have a fire department, somebody standing at your site, okay, when you build it? Are you going to have some kind of equipment there in case something happens? Or are you going to work with the fire departments here to get them equipment till something happens?
We'll do both.
Okay. How about the noise quality? I mean, there's people in this room who live
next to it, noise. And then, let's say one of them trucks that takes that stuff, the mud, we want to take it to the landfill. What happens to one of them wrecks? And, you know, do you guys have the stuff to clean that stuff up before it gets into the ground?
Okay, yeah, so all of the, you know, when the site is built, you know, in terms of response, you know, things that if there's a response, what's a risk? A tank breaches, you know. We're all very cognizant of the spill from Freedom Industries. So all the chemical containers have MSDS, everything, SDS now. Everything within the site is contained within the perimeter berm of the pad. We have a site safety plan for everything within the plant. The plant's manned 24 hours, 365. So it's not something that's set off its face and nobody's there watching it. There'd be somebody there all day, every day when it's in service. And there'd be that team of people there all day, every day while it's in service. In terms of working with locals, we of course share all the site safety plans, emergency action plans, anything that we have would be shared with the locals, and then any training that we could collaborate on, we certainly would be open for that. In terms of the truck wrecks or any type of exposure to the public from any of that, I know we've had a lot of questions about radiation, but I would say that it's our job to prove to the regulators, those folks that understand the decay series for uranium and thorium, the folks that understand those things. It's our case to show them why it's safe. It's our case to show the math, the science, the analytics, the sampling, characterization of all those wastes. It's our job to show them how that interacts with the public. And that's what we've been doing. That's what we've been doing with this plant for the past 11 months, is going through those studies, understanding what that waste is, understanding what our rocks are here, not what our rocks are in the Redding prongs to the north, where uranium and thorium is much more prevalent for somebody with a scientific background. So, our commitment to you is that we cannot affect the public without being through a thorough vetting of a list of federal, local, and county agencies.
How much noise is going to be there?
Noise, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Projection is around 80 at the edge of the fence for the plant. So at the edge of the facility, 80. That's not discounted for road noise or anything like that. 80 decibels is around push mowers.
But I think that the fire department should be, especially along the 4 lanes, equipped to handle. Maybe you guys all get the fire department some money to do the equipment to make sure they're safe too when they handle that stuff.
Yeah, we've had some requests that we were talking about this morning about the freshwater system, where we're pumping river water through a freshwater system. Could we supply a local storage tank or something like that if it's near the freshwater pipeline? And if we got some spots from local folks to where it would be a good location for that tank, and how it would, we'd run our freshwater line to understand where we are in proximity to that. We could collaborate on some storage methods like that.
Excuse me, I don't think that you ever did answer Mr. Gray's question about the truck driving. All you said was if you needed to change it to a stoplight in the area.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, the road that he's talking about, you'll see 8 trucks together every hour. Now, if you were going to bring in 600 trucks, and they're all going to be running 20 miles an hour, how do you ever expect for any of the local people to get anywhere or get anything?
Oh, sure. Now, so that access will be vetted through DOH, and we do all the.
DOH doesn't have any problem with taking money from you people to do whatever you need to have done.
Well, I'd rather get my ditch cleaned from where Antero went out to drill 2 wells up behind me.
We put up with the truck.
They say, call Antero. I call the Department of Highways. Call Antero. It's their problem. I talked to Dave after Camp Capitol, and he says, it's the Department of Transportation, it's the DOT fault now. I bet grass growing up, now there's cattails growing there, then they come in, they tell me, you can't touch it, it's got cattails, it's a wetland. They can't clean that little culvert because it's filled up 3 foot deep with gravel because there's a wetland out, they found crawfish in it. You know, I took 2 property the other day, right there, 15 feet from my house. We walked down, cleaned the damn ditch.
He lived right beside where you went into 2 locations.
Yeah.
And nobody in that neighborhood has said nothing.
These 2 houses up from me, something's right at the top of that exit would happen, upset, spill. I drove truck, I've got over 250 million miles over the road. 8% of the truck drivers couldn't drive a sharp stick up. Well, anyway. You can wreck one of them, it's coming down the road, in the curve, and not property.
Okay.
I'd just like to talk about a few other things.
Sure. Well, in terms of the.
It was just for well.
Yeah.
But now, it's not going to be for just
Yeah. So let's be sure it's 600 truck trips, so it's not 600 literal trucks. So they'd be timed out throughout the day. Now, so all that would be,
It's 300.
one truck, like 600. Still, as far as I can figure, it's 600 trips.
Yeah, so in terms of that, we will do this traffic study to be sure that's all safe. I'll look into that issue there and see what I can do.
I have a quick question that has nothing, I want to spell your last name right. So
Sure. Baston. I get a lot of Basins.
You're the general manager of civil engineering?
Yes, sir. Any additional questions?
Yeah.
One back here.
Wait a minute, there's one back here.
Do we have time for any more?
I think we're really past, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry, we're really past our time.
Hey.
Let us be.
Sir, did you say you were from Fairmont?
Actually, I'm from French Creek originally. Yeah.
But you live in...
Live there now. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
So, if this is such a great thing, and it's going to be so great for the community and economic development, how come you're moving this operation from Fairmont to Doddridge?
Oh, I'm not moving anything from Fairmont to Doddridge. There is another plant in Fairmont.
Right, how come you're not using that like you were...
Okay, yeah. Whenever we evaluated our partners in the design, as I mentioned, we looked at all the big blue chips, we looked at some of the startups, we looked at everybody. And that particular facility is currently maybe a 1/12 of the size of what we need, so it's too small. So, plus it's not in the right area. It's too far away from where our activity is. So, this plant is being designed by Veolia, who's that technical partner that we chose to be meet all of our needs from a design standpoint. So we're not moving anything from there. That was an existing plant from a while ago, and this is where we would have always put the plant. That was just an existing one that's too small.
Well, I thought they were under the impression that you were going to work with them.
Well, we've had a lot of people. I mean, we've talked to everyone in terms of water treatment, and we ended up picking Veolia to build this larger facility.
Thank you very much
I'm afraid
for your time.
that's all we got time for.
No, they put you guys in front of our public comment area.
Thank you, Antero, for making the presentation.
Kind of hurry.
Greg, could we have a small break?